This tutorial is on the subject of phase as an effect, as opposed to phase with regards to phase cancellation, partial phase cancellation, etc. If you need, and I recommend that you do, if you need to understand a little bit more about phase, it's worth watching the video on phase that I created or reading the chapter on the subject of phase in my books. And I cover this in the EQ book and the effects book. We're going to work with a drum beat that I just quickly created using Falcon. I'll just play it for you. I've inserted Soundtoys Phase Mistress, which is probably my best phaser effect, simply because there's a lot more going on this than there is on, say, the Cubase one, which is just very, very basic. A phaser is simply an effects unit that takes incoming audio, adds a bunch of what we call stages, which are filters, and all of them are what we call all-pass filters. Each one of those filters is called a stage. If I were to click on the tweak button here, if you look here, these stages, and you can see them scroll here, determine the number of filters we're going to have. So if I put it here on 10, we'll have 10 filters, 24, we'll have 24 filters. All of them are all pass filters, as I said, but this is where the funky stuff starts happening. This unit actually shifts the phase responses of each filter ever so slightly. What happens then is that we feed this output, i.e. the filtered output, back with the audio, usually on a 50-50 split. You can appreciate what happens if you've watched the phase cancellation or the phase video. You will get cancellation, but you'll also get summing. So where the two frequencies sum, they'll create a notch. Where more than two frequencies sum, they'll create more notches. So if we had all 24 filters and each one was phase shifting and each one was cancelling and yet summing, when we added back to the dry signal, we would have all of these separate notches, which look very much like a comb. Not going to get into comb filtering yet until we hit on flanges, but just think of it like this. Think of the audio being passed back in, the treated audio, mixed with the dry signal, and invariably we will get some phase cancellation. But where we don't get phase cancellation and we get summing, we get these superimposed notches. Now those phase shifts are controlled and modulated here and by a source modulator. The rate of the modulator is controlled here. The resonance of the filters are controlled here. The frequency we select is here. And this is a mix of the original dry and wet. Normally, phases and flanges tend to mix 50-50, but nowadays we do what the hell we like. Style, you can pick any style you like, and there are so many. And each one is, a different type of flavor. The important thing here is how we want those notches to behave. Now, in the case of phase and notch phase here, bearing in mind, this is the resonance phase, and this is for the notches. So we do have control over both. We can pick odd harmonics for what we call negative phase, and we can have even harmonics for positive phase, as I explained previously. But we also have it for the notch. Here, we can control the modulator's frequency or rate, modulator for the resonance, offset of the resonance for the modulator, and the left and right offset, which we've come to use many times. We can reverse or have normal mode, or we can select our own modulator like an envelope and work to that envelope's shape. We also have a threshold control, which we've touched on many times before in the Soundtoys products, attack, decay, and obviously a gain value. Here is where this unit actually starts to get even more interesting. Apart from the styles and the plethora of modulation sources we have, we can also flip this into analog mode or select our own. This output is really funky. So if you want utterly filthy phase effects, you go for the crunches and the shreds and the dirt and the squashes. And if you want clean and transparent, etc., pumping, so on and so on. Do we need more control than this? To be honest, we don't. We have all the control that we need. There really is very little else to cover apart from run a quick example. I'll put this on 50-50 and I'll play it for you. can hear that swooshing phasing sound coming in and out. Now, if I take my frequency higher, make this wetter, you can hear the frequency dramatically altering the phase. And if I start to move the threshold now, we get different types of phase effects. I created some of my own here to show you how easy it is to bring out specific frequencies in a beat or a riff, whatever. I mean, that's as dirty as they come. It's gorgeous. Change the modulator shape. That is so lovely. Let's now go to LFO so I can show you how the rate of the modulator here, and this is intensity of modulation. The good thing about this is that if we were to select, say, rhythmic and sync it to, you can get some really funky effects going here that modulate over time. This is every bar. All you need to know about a phaser is the following. The sound, it is then run through a bunch of all-pass filters. You select how many you want. The more you have, the more intricate the phase effect. We call these filters stages. So here I can pick 24 stages. So I've got 24 filters. All of them are all-pass. Negative, positive. Negative generates odd harmonics. Positive generates even harmonics. So if I was using, say, I don't know, vocals and I wanted to add some of this, I'd mix up negatives and positives together to give it that richness. If it was a piano, I might stick to positives because I want those even harmonics. You'll learn as you go along. Frequency modulation is the rate for the modulator, and the modulator modulates the notches, not the dry sound, only the notches. We can also select how thin we want those notches to be or how thick we want them to be. That's all I'm going to do for now, because I will be coming on to phasers in the advanced section when we start dealing with pads and vocals.